Okay, okay. So yeah, my name is Camilla Alberti. I am an Italian visual artist, and I am living and working in Milan. I am really pleased to meet you all, even if just only digitally. I'm so sorry that I know be present in this event in person. But yeah, I have this residency here in Gangneung, so until the end of September, and I'm working on a new sculpture to present in GF23. So in the end of this presentation, I will show you some photos of the working process, and I hope that you enjoy it. So we can start with the presentation. So I work using different medium, including sculpture, painting, and industrial embroidery, as you can see from this slide, and all focus on the same purpose, which is to create an imaginary able to deconstruct the anthropocentrism. And so through my work, I reflect on the concept of building words and on the rule and relationship that each inhabitant and builder, human and not human, obviously, define through their being in the world. For me, this process, so this being in the world means to inhabiting and constructing space, shaping relationship with what is other than one's own organism. So in a process that is consciously or unconsciously. As a space, an environment, it's never, how to say, it's never finished, so it's never static, but is always under construction and in metamorphosis, where building involves a continual relationship between human and not human constructive method. So with the constructive method, I refer to the way in which a particular species or organism choose to shape its surrounding, its space. For example, the human beings build their world through the architecture. And in my work, initially, I start with the analysis of the human constructive method, so the architecture, and I developed some sculptures that portrayed its like clear geometry, first with wood and wire, and then with some waste and natural material. And you can see an example in the left part of this slide. So this is one of my really first work when I was in academy in Milan. And so with constructing words, however, it's just not only a prerogative of the human beings, but every living creature has different processes through which it can construct its own reality. And it's a capacity that inherent in the act of living itself. So, and in larger ecosystem, there's different work consisting of modern spatial realities collide with each other, merge and cancel each other out, and adapt to complex reality made up of physical and temporal links and entanglements. In like this first corpus of reflection has generated the various artworks in my career, and both cultural and installation, in which the relationship between the species became the fundamentals focus. Some examples are here in this slide. So the first one is Serico, and the second one is Ruins. The first is a sculpture with an organic shape, and here you can see some photos related to the working process of the sculpture, because it's a sculpture with an organic shape that I left to the colonization of 40 silkworms for the entire duration of their lives. And the aim of this project was to establish a dialogue between two different construction and spatial analysis methods. So the one of the human and the second one of the silkworm. Ruins, however, is a series of two sculptures in which the original architecture has been colonized by wild plants and mosses. And so in both these two cases, the element I had constructed in the beginning became a matter of manipulation by other living species, engaging in a process of transformation completely alien and different to my will and my timing. And so this work have taught me to reflect on the identity of what is time, what is the meaning of the time. And so when it comes to the relationship with the other, so what we consider other than us, it is essential to recognize the meeting with this otherness, entering into a different sphere of time and a different rhythm of life. Producing work by collaborating with the other living species had led me to come to terms with their time, altering the fast rhythm of my work to synchronize it with different being in the world. And so in this sense, I consider art as a process of awareness, like a tool capable to opening up spaces of experimentation and imagination where it is possible to question human being in the world through the construction of a new imaginary and narrative method. And so now I talk about building, inhabiting, hybridization, and interspecies relation, transforming and imaging, and lastly about the encounter of the different temporalities. And so it is precisely by linking myself to this last theme that I would like to introduce the next one, that is the ruins. In the process of word making, quoting Donna Haraway, that is an amazing philosopher and author, past, present, and future coexist in a temporal sphere. Within this paradigm, linear time can be understood and intervened and entangled. And thus, indissoluble nodes are visible in the place that we usually inhabit, so in our space. These places are the result of the process of building and abandonment of living and non-living organisms. They are so, in a way, like ruin in constant transformation. And so what is a ruin? A ruin is like an abandoned place without an owner who defines their boundaries. So ruins are therefore capable to becoming a place where a plurality of living species can collaborate and fight against each other in a continuous construction of their own world. Abandonment in this case is really a potential strength intended to as a possibility of losing boundary to become a hybrid and permeating space. So it's really a big power, the power of the ruin, I think. And so let me give you like a practical example so you can imagine better what I mean with ruin. So you have to imagine like an abandoned house in a forest that is over time eaten by vegetation and becoming the home of insects and small animals, in turn becoming the hunting ground for larger mammals and perhaps the hiding place of the hunter. So a place that was originally just only a home and house for some group of human who defended its perimeters and cleaned the corner from the spider web, maybe sealing the windows and all the other process that we usually do in our house, has now turned into a space with a multiple use. So it's becoming a hybrid space. And related to this, Fuochi di Mezz'estate, or Midsummer Fire, is the first physical example of this theoretical process. Our two installations were built from a series of geometrical shapes, resulting from a mixture of found object, industrial waste, and abandoned objects. So I assembled those elements to build a ruined architecture, which I abandoned for 6 months in the hands of other organisms in the middle of nowhere in a woods. And then from here, you can see from of my latest artistic research, that is a sculptural series entitled Unbinding Creatures, is in which the geometric shape that I used in the beginning of my artistic career become and has been transformed into a complex body. Thus, the ruined space opened a series of complex, dynamic, transformative imagery made up of links and interaction. And so learning to navigate them means to rethinking one's position from an individual to a plurality. And so it means to rethinking the idea of body. So we have to create another image of our body. And these paradigm shifts is enable us to deconstruct the identity of the individual body in favor of a body space in which an organism is not just only an individual, but a biologically composed entity. Inhabited by other organisms. And in biology, there is a term for this type of creatures, and we are one of them, that is holobiont. So in this process of deconstruction and reconstruction, we need like a references figures to flesh out the process of identity and identity dissolution in favor of deep interconnection and mutual understanding between individuals of a distant species. And so in my research, these figures are embodied by the imaginary and symbol of monster. In popular tradition, monster are hybrid organisms that usually inhabit the dark side of the fairy tale. So they usually are the villain of our stories. They are banned to the edge of the society or killed by heroes in a perpetual stereotypized and hold and worn out and unsustainable plot. And so in my work, monsters are, however, the protagonist of a new narrative that tends toward the hybrid mythologies rooted in the world and distant from the anthropomorphism. Those monsters are the key figure in my research on binding creatures, a series of sculpture and installation built from a process of a urban archaeology. That is a practice that through which I usually collect abandoned object, industrial waste, and anthropic element. And each element collected is like a map that is capable of telling story of otherness and coexistence, because on their surface are imprinted the trace of other species' life. So because they have molded their shape or eroded their brilliance or polished their edge. So it's possible to catch all these little trace. The construction of the sculptural bodies begin with the study and care of these collected ruins, and is often a long and collaborative process that requires, in a way, knowledge and, of course, respect for the other organisms that are involved in this process. So, for example, there are some part of this cleaning process of the ruins in which I collaborate with wasps and bees that clean maybe the carapace of and clothes of the crustacean, for example, because they are so fragile that for me it's impossible to clean the internal part. And another example is with the mosses that polish the wood surface or the woodwork that shape the form of the maybe a roots, for example, or a piece of wood. So all the collected materials become then part of assemblage made of aluminum thread and plaster bandage. And the sculpture become, in the end, a corporeal map made up of traits and stories that are observed as a place and known as a body. And now I'm currently trying to transform an individual practice. So all this process of research of material on sites, like the finding ruins on a place, I try to transform this process into a space for discussion and confrontation in which a community can be involved. An example of this is the latest project, Learning in this Binding, that was exhibited in the Italian pavilion at the Gwangju Biennale in South Korea. And this work was created following a 3-month residency in the Seoul Institute of the Art in Seoul, where I engaged the student in lecture, debates, and workshop, and to start an imaginative conversation on narrative that can really change how humans perceive their being in the world. And the objective of this first phase, in fact, were to imagine together scenarios that could construct the predominant anthropocentric position by reflecting on the importance and significance of the interrelation between living species and their coexistence. So together with the student, we spent hours discovering the space around the Seoul Art Campus to train our eyes to catch the detail that surround us, the trace of others' life left on the surface of the abandoned object. So, and in the end, I asked the student to scouring the space, focusing on the detail in order to notice what is happening around them and out of them. And so to do this, we work on collecting materials, on studying together during our discussion time, the trace of other organisms lives, such as little hole of the woodworms or the presence of mosses. And so what does it mean training the gaze? I think that is it's a process that it's necessary to catch the life of other that's happened out of us. And I think that it's not really a easy process because it means to admitting and imaging other point of view outside of the human one. And so to do so, however, we need to deconstruct like the anthropocentric bias that prevent us from feeling an immersion in the world and showing us a distorted reality has organisms that stay above the dynamic necessary for life. And so I think that ruins have the power to physically reveal to us the dynamic of coexistence. They make tangible the bonds, the way of the words. And so I think that the ruins are the perfect place where we can learn a new way of living, capable of inspiring the construction, we can say, of a new narrative and a hybrid images. Now, so I'm here in Korea, as I said before, in the city of Gangneung. So I hope that my pronounce it's good. To produce a sculpture that it's come from the Unbinding Creatures research, which will be exhibited in GIAF 23, that is a Gangneung International Art Festival, is a project under the artistic direction of Sohee Park, an amazing curator, and her team, whom I really thank for allowing me to take part in this exhibition alongside such immense artists as Francis Ellis, Rosa Barba, and Tino Segal, just 3 examples, and many other names that I will let you discover. And so the opening of this exhibition will be on 13th of October in Gangneung, and I will unfortunately not be physically present, but I hope that you will have the opportunity to visit the exhibition, of course. And thank you very much for your attention. So I'm here for your question, and I will be really happy to answer to all of you. Thank you.